One. And wait, where's the button? More. Oh yeah, comment right here. As we're allowing her to fill in, I'm gonna put the where we at. I wanted to go live. Get into some comments. You saw the main piece that was what we're talking about today's live, as I'm allowing everything to come in good. I want to get into the aspects of pageantry. One thing that I work in, and I'm gonna give a brief who I am, what I do. Welcome as everybody comes in. Let me go ahead and do some sharing real quick outside of here to challenge my perspective. The biggest thing when it comes into the healing process is challenging your perspective, is literally challenging your perspective. A lot of the things that we came into, a lot of the things that we come under when we're coming into that healing process, coming into our shadow work, coming into our inner child healing, our adolescent healing, breaking down a lot of these aspects of ourselves and understanding the difference between pageantry versus application. The pageantry process versus the application process. It's two different aspects that a lot of us get stuck in, and we don't get into that. We don't get into that today. I'm gonna do some reading, some good stuff like that. So as we filling in, I'm gonna give me that brief introduction. Papa Lucifer Samdi. Papa Samdi, Godical Alchemist. What I specialize is I'm a psychoanalyst, spiritual therapist that deals in the aspects of shadow work healing and aspects of building inside of that space. Whew. One of the biggest things that when we're coming into our space, when we're learning aspects of ourselves, when we're understanding and learning these aspects of ourselves, is the rebuilding process. Getting stuck in the duality, still getting stuck within that aspect of a narrative. I'm ask you a question real quick. Whenever you think about you doing this as an aspect of what's up, fam? Think about this aspect as a job. Think about you coming into your space as a job. Think about your job. Everything you do based on your job is based on what you need, based on a lot of times when we're sitting inside of this space, we're trying to gain credit. When we think about the aspects of our traumatic experiences, we think about the stuff you've been through, the stuff that's inside of your shadow, the stuff that's going on inside of your shadow, the stuff that you don't want to deal with. In understanding the narratives that we create in order to feed our trauma. The biggest thing of aspects of what you're using to feed your trauma. So think about an aspect like this. You have a rejection wound. You have a rejection wound, an abandonment wound. Until that is resolved, I always go into this, but as we're allowing it to fill up, until you resolve that abandonment wound, meaning getting to the root of it, that means where you learned your first lesson, where you learned what you thought was abandonment, how you thought you felt inside of that space. Until you deal with that, you're always going to go through the pageantry or the reactions or the acting based on that traumatic wound. So everything that you're going to do naturally is going to be to fill that emotional void. This is what I call the aspects of pageantry. This is the aspects of pageantry versus the levels of application. Simple definitions. Pageantry is the state of you can't apply to anything that's based on the state of pageantry. You can't apply anything else to a state of pageantry. You can't apply anything else. You can't go any further when you're stuck in a state, when you created this scene in your mind, and now you're trying to, all you're going to do is keep reconstituting that space. All you're going to do is keep reconstituting that space. Every single time you sit there and do the work. All you're ever going to do is keep reconstituting shit within that space. Think about it about the aspects of, I'm from the hood and they trying to hold us down. They, them, it's their fault, putting blame on everybody else. The main thing when it comes to pageantry or the glamour is you never are able to directly say the names. You're never able to directly point it to anybody. And when you do point it towards somebody, it's usually being filtered through the aspects of that blame. What they should have done, what they should have done, what they should have said, how they should have acted, how they should have took you, how they should have heard you, how they shouldn't have disrespected you. So you just keep building out inside of that space. You keep, every time you keep moving forward, you keep acting as the last time. You keep bartering with the aspects of your energy. You keep going through that state of pageantry versus the state of actual application. The state of application is when one, in the simplest definition, is one I'm applying to my purpose. Until I understood what I needed to do to apply, until I started applying to my purpose, everything that I did as a man, trying to find this definition of what a man was, everything external became my purpose. And I talk about this all the time. I go deep into this with my clients all the time. Until you resolve that internal dialogue, that internal aspect, that unresolved, that traumatic point, all you can do is emulate. So as I'm building into this example, when it came to me going through the state of pageantry, the state of acting, the state of maintaining a certain identity of what I thought manhood was, I only could emulate from the spaces of what I thought faces enemies. I only could move from the state of being with myself of what I learned from. So I'll use an example. I didn't get the love and the support that I should have got when I was younger from my father. Not knowing the aspect, not going from a sense of blame, going from an aspect of having a scapegoat. Every time that I did something, I always had that. Every time, as long as you just think about this, as long as you have a scapegoat, you always have guaranteed problems. As long as you have a scapegoat, you always have guaranteed problems. You never have to come up with solutions. As long as you have a bona fide scapegoat, you don't have to come up with solutions. As long as it's somebody else in the driver's seat, it was my dad's fault. It was my mom's fault. It was the story my mom told about my dad. It was all my exes cheated on me. All these people did this to me. They didn't put me first. As long as you have a scapegoat to fill that void, you'll always have that problem. One of the key aspects when it comes to the aspects of building out your space is understanding the basis of where the original balance is. One of the things that we do not do when we keep stepping outside of ourselves is that it's a common narrative that we have all heard this shit. I had to be a man. I had to be my own man. I had to be my own man. Think about that aspect. I had to be my own man. If I can cook, and for fellas, if I cook, clean, take care of all the basics of myself, then okay. I'm gonna give you something to think about. Because I can cook, clean, take care of my basics, makes me no less of a man. It makes me no less of the sitting in the masculine space. Because you work and you take care of your basics, it makes you no less of sitting in your feminine. The action that we think about when we say I gotta be my own man, or I gotta be, or I can do all my other shit. I don't need no chick for that shit because I can do it all shit myself. And building in that narrative, it's not based on you sitting in that space. It's you sitting in the dysfunction, i.e., the wounded masculine perspective. It's you sitting in that lack thereof, or sitting in that wounded feminine perspective. You're sitting in that wounded feminine perspective. You're sitting in that wounded masculine perspective. As long as you're sitting within that perspective, your perception, your external, you need something to feed the perspective. Remember to pick, give simple key. The perspective is the internal before your perception is given for fraction. Think about it. Look like this. Everything that you're looking at, everything that you look at in your environment, you're projecting. The only way that you can see it, when we talk about being on that frequency, being on that vibration, the only reason you can see it is because there's a part of your perception that connects you to that. There's a part of your perception that connects to that can be projected to that until it comes back to give you the necessary perception. It's a simple, think about it simply like this. You, your brother, your sisters, your cousins, your family, all can grow up in the same neighborhood around the same space. But somehow you came up out of the dirt. You came up out of the filth. You came up out of the shit. But everybody else seemed to be fucked up. It's because everybody's perspective is different based on what they record, based on what they recall, based on their emotional dialect, their emotional dialogue, their emotional intelligence level, their lessons, the things that they need to learn, everything that goes inside of that space. So now you project this into your world. You project that into your world. Mm-hmm. Being inside of that space. You feel what I'm saying? Your unresolved is what triggers and changes your unresolved, or what's the stuff that you left unresolved, the stuff that's inside of your shadow. That's what changes that's what connects what you're constantly trying to reconstitute and trying to create new experiences, i.e., the new perception of what it should look like or what it should have been. What your life should have been, how your life should have been. If this didn't happen to me when I was 3, if this didn't happen to me when I was younger, you're giving yourself every answer that you need. We'll get deeper into that aspect. Because you're still thinking about when you were 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I talk to this with my clients all the time. Because you were still thinking from the spaces of 5, 6 from your childhood, you're emotionally that age. You're still stuck in that. Your emotional development is that in that 8-year-old space, that 11-year-old space. Whenever we talk about the aspects of trauma, the reason that trauma is not a memory, it's staying in a constant state of reaction, is because the trauma does not go through an aspect of a memory. Trauma eliminates the ability to regulate the emotion in order to create the memory, in order to create the actual aspects of the memory. Literally, when you go through a traumatic experience and it goes unresolved, it will keep playing itself out in your space because it's trying to find a space to fit. It's literally trying to find that space to fit. You're trying to make it right. You're trying to make it just. So as long as this is why when we think about the aspects of being, when you're sitting in that space and we think about the reason that we think about that state of being in that hyper state, hypervigilant, hypersexualized, all these states of hyperadolescence. It's because you're still stimulating from the aspects of you're not present. As long as I had unresolved, that's the constant distortion. Your mind, You're constantly going, remember, Gnostic teachings teaches that this is an inherently flawed space. This space is inherently flawed. That's why everything, you think about everything's cut in fours. You're stuck within the distortion. You're stuck within the distortion. As long as you're stuck behind the distortion, you're stuck behind that. As long as you're stuck behind the distortion with oneself and you haven't resolved that your emotional intelligence, that means you're stuck in the lower levels. I always talk about love and fear are bases. Love and fear are two states. There's the fear-based state, that's guilt, shame. There's guilt, that shame, that insecure, the guilt, the shame, the doubt, the apathy, the lower level of emotions, insecurity, shame, all of those aspects. And then you're in the higher aspects of self. That's love, that's joy, that's enlightenment, that's peace. And let's get to the peak point of fear. At the peak of fear is neutrality. At the peak of fear is neutrality. So I want you to hold that in your mind. The peak of fear is neutrality. The peak of fear is neutrality. You haven't built out, you can have the dreams. Think about this. You can have the dreams of being the best father ever, best mother ever, best son, best relationship. You have this idea in your mind of the good person. You have this idea in your mind of what the good person would be. And the only reason that perspective is there to be the good person is only based off of all of the bad stuff or all of the negatives that happen. Well, a good person isn't this, and a good person isn't this, and a good person isn't this. I'm this, this, and this. These are the things that are going to make me a good person. So now most people go up to that state, into that space of neutrality. And as long as I'm going to give you this thing before I get your disclaimer. As long as you got the car, you got the house, you got the family, you got the 2.5 kids, you got the dog, you have all of these simple aspects in your life, most people never go above that point. Most people never go above that point of neutrality because they have everything that they have the job, they have a job, they have the house, they have all of these aspects. Through the state of fear, the reason that they're so comfortable inside of that space, and this is why I tell a lot of people whenever they're going through their healing process, when I'm working with my clients, and they'll be like, but what about my girlfriend? Or what about my wife? Or what about my sister? Or what about my family members? You can't force somebody if they're comfortable inside of that space. They're comfortable inside of that space. When we think about sitting inside of the space, the reason that you become so comfortable inside of that space and it's hard to break out of is because you went your entire life connecting all of your trauma, your unresolved, your trauma, your rejection wounds, your abandonment wounds, your separation wounds, your anxieties, all of these aspects, your insecurities, you attach them to your accomplishments. That's why it becomes so hard to break away from when people are, I want to break out of the matrix. You're running away from yourself. You can't get it. You can't unplug because of how you attach to it. You can't unplug until you sit with how you attach to it. If you have abandonment issues, separation issues, the rejection wounds. Let's use abandonment as an example. Let's say you got some real deep abandonment wounds. It could have been anything from the first time you was on skates or riding your bike and the training wheels came off and your pop said he was going to be with you behind you, or your mom's was right behind you going to be with you to ride behind you behind the bike, and then her phone rang or she heard something, she looked off or he looked off, and your ass tumbled in the fucking trash cans. That's a traumatic experience. That's abandonment. You felt abandoned inside of that narrative. No matter what they said and did, of course they came back to you, but ultimately inside of that space, you felt abandonment. That goes unresolved. That abandonment goes unresolved. That perspective of how you learned abandonment now goes unresolved. Now you have an issue on top. You have that on top of another issue, because now you have to look at how you got to that point. The biggest thing when it comes into aspects of the application process is that it's a continuous process. It's a continuous process. A lot of people treat like their healing process, their shadow work, we treat it as an aspect of a job. That means we're doing it to seek credit. That means the moment that we get something done, the moment that we do it, yay, I'm going to get credit. If I get credit for this, I'm straight. If I get credit for this, if I can, yay, I won. If I go sit next to somebody and they see me doing this, I get credit for it. I get credit for it. I can stay within my space. I don't have to change everything. That's the pageantry versus the application. That's the pageantry of the application. So let's take that abandonment wound and build it out. So through that abandonment wound, you were on your bike, you fell off your bike, or let's go to that point. Let's build that out. Let's say, for example, your dad was supposed to help you. Your dad was supposed to come help you learn how to ride your bike. It was his day to visit, or he was coming in. He was going to help you ride your bike. But then something happened. He was at work. Something happened with him, so he couldn't come. So your mom said, "Okay, cool. That means I got to step in and do it." I can guarantee you, because of that abandonment, you have to attach your accomplishments to something. You're to attach your accomplishments to one thing, and your accomplishments to one side, what's in the light, what you can see, and you're going to attach the failures to the negative or to the shadow. So that wound already present of your father not being around, as this example, your father not being around, you running face first into them fucking trash cans, you're going to put that into your shadow. That way you can look at your mom and say, that way you can look at your mother and be like, it's okay. It's okay. I didn't make you proud. I didn't keep you proud. I didn't make you proud. Now you created the emotional point. See, in the shadow is that unresolved reaction. I didn't make you proud. First time you probably ever said, I didn't make you proud. I'm sorry that I failed. I should have paid attention. I should have listened. Because all you're doing is replaying everything you're trying to replace, so you don't make your mom mad like your pops. Because you're trying to take on that role. So now you get older. You go from, let's say that was around age 8. Let's say you get up in around 12, 13, 14, 15. Now you become the man. Now you're taking on the role of the man of the house. The man that your mom needs. The man that your mom needs. You're your mother's project. You're your mother's, let's be honest. A lot of us don't understand that the narratives that we come into based on the traditional on that traditional process, a lot of these aspects of was for your parents, you were their purpose and project. You were their purpose and project. The conversation between your mom and your dad, let's build this example out, between your mom and your dad still wanted to be on the road, or he had his vices, or your mom had her vices. So instead of your mom acknowledging, she didn't have the ability to acknowledge that because she was taking care of you, or your pops couldn't take care of you, or your parents weren't all the way emotionally available. You became their project. They saw you through that. Now they're still reliving their trauma. They're still reliving through their trauma. They're still living throughout their unresolved. So everything that they do is to live through you. So then you think about your abandonment wounds, that insecurity that you have. This is when I'm working with my clients. That insecurity that you have, how deeply rooted is it? How deeply rooted is that insecurity? How deeply rooted is it really? Where is it coming? Where does it lead to? What is the root to it? Because a lot of times we sit inside of that. I remember sitting inside of that space. And since I did not want to deal with my internal conflicts, watching my mom and pops fight, watching the things that I saw outside of me, everything became my purpose. It became my purpose to be a better man than my pops. I became a better man than my uncles, became a better man than the men that I was around. So the first wave for me inside of that space as an adolescent in that space was something as simple. And we don't understand how you're always, this is what I break down. You've always been doing the spiritual work. Everything you've done in the aspects of repetition has always been the spiritual work. Whether you was at a stage wherever you went and got the Source magazine, or you went and got the MTV, the Word Up magazine, or whatever, the Jet magazine, and you put plastic pictures all over your wall, album covers, whatever it was over your wall, that was you creating a vision board. Things of that nature. You put Lil' Kim on your wall, Beyonce and them on your wall. That was you doing young altar work inside of that space. All of that was all of that imagination was streamed through trauma. Your first time your mom took you, the first time that your mom was like, all right, cool, yes, you can get that bike, or yes, you can go this. Your mom slaved. Your mom went to work 6 fucking double shifts back to back to back to get you that fucking bomber jacket because you thought it was cool, or to go get you that fucking CD or them Jordans or them shoes. That instant that happened and you got something from it and you put the picture on your wall, congratulations, you was using a vision board. That was your first time ever using a vision board. And you only knew, you kept pouring your energy into that. And what did you say? I don't want to look weird at school. I don't want to look like everybody want to pick on me at school, things of that nature. And then you sat there. So now this is your first steps in the, whether you building out the pageantry of manhood or the pageantry of coming into that womanhood aspect. You just keep repeating these aspects inside of your space. So then as you become older, you already laid the groundwork. The hardest thing for me to realize when it came into learning my purpose, the hardest thing that happened for me to learn and coming into my purpose is that I had to deal with what I already laid, the groundwork I already did. See, the biggest thing about the aspects of when we're doing that inner child healing and doing this internal healing, doing that shadow work, doing the healing, is you have to address all of that. You have to address every point. You have to address these points that you created to create said reality. You have to understand the points that you created that created said reality. If you don't acknowledge it, it'll be acknowledged for you. It's in the shadow it's okay. Let me keep playing this out. You got a whole entire life. I don't know why my life keep going the way it keep going. Every time this happened and this happened, because you're going through the states of pageantry. 90% of the shit that I did when I was going through a traumatic experience, I'm gonna break this because I'm always being transparent. 90% of the shit that I did when I did not understand my purpose and I made things externally my purpose. That means I made my job my purpose, my relationship my purpose. It was my purpose to be the best man in a relationship. My purpose to do this. The external was my purpose. I was always doing it from a state of the wounded perspective. I was doing it from a space of being from my wounds. So every relationship that I was in was against their will. It was against their natural rhythm. The reason that a lot of the shit keep going awry inside of your life is because you have been subscribing to an unnatural rhythm. You've been subscribing to the wounded perspective. I said this earlier on, and we said it earlier on. Due to me not having what I thought should have been that basis for myself of what a man should do with aspects of, I didn't have the example of a man working within his purpose. I remember having later on in that aspect of life, when my pops would tell me stories about his past. He would tell me stories about how he grew up. He was out there running. My pops ran a whole fucking whole house. He was running brothels and shit. That was his life before he met my mother. That was his life before he met my mother. He was out there running shit. He was out there running. He had the apartment complex and brothel joints. That's what he was doing. The only reason that he stopped that was because of a traumatic event. His brother died of AIDS. He said, okay, I'm out of this. I don't want to die like that. I don't want to die. I don't want that shit to happen to me. So then he had a whole nother relationship beforehand. Then he met my mother. Now think about that aspect. What led him? When we don't think about the aspects of being inside of our purpose, and we're looking at the aspects of the fear in that fear narrative, I just want to get to a point of neutrality. I just want to live this life outside of one's purpose. Everything you do is going to be attached to the trauma. My pops attached his entire makeup of his life to his resentments, to his own abandonment wounds, to his separation wound, to all of his wounds. My pops, I've told this story before in Lex Lives. My pops never met his mother. His mother, at his birth, he was the youngest, at his birth, his mom passed. His mom transitioned. So he never met his mother. When my pops learned the story of his mother, my pops coming through hard. My pops finally learned the story of his mother. He was coming home from school. And then his dad and his stepmother, he didn't know it was a stepmother at the time. His dad and his mom, his stepmother, he didn't know it was a stepmother at the time, came out and said, like, so when are you going to tell him about his mother? When are you going to tell him about his mother for real? He heard that, spiraled. He heard that and spiraled. From there, he went to go live with his grandmother, or my grandfather's mother. He went to go live with my grandfather's mother. So inside of that space, for the first time, that was his first experience with abandonment or separation or rejection, because he heard that story. He was like, wait, you're not my mother? Why would you say that? Why would you push that towards my pops? Because everything else, the thing that we forget to do as we're going through our traumatic experiences is we have to understand both sides of the coin. It does me no good to deal with only one side of the work, one side of that coin. My pops had one side of the answer. That's what he attached his new reactions to. He didn't have the other side of that answer. He never got the other side of that coin. So his job now, what he's attracting inside of his space is linking to give him that answer, to give him that feeling. My pops never met his mother. Now I'm gonna give you the other end of that fucking coin. Give you the other end of that coin. And the aspects of how we build out, and then we don't get into this traditional stuff. My mom never met her pops. My mom never met her pops. In that same instance, she never met her pops. She has her. The only thing that she knew was the last time that she had any memory of her pops or being told anything about her pops was when she was 3 years old. That's how far her shit went. Her memories of her father went up to 3 years old. That's as far as her shit went. Up to about 3 years old. That's as far as her shit went, was up to 3 years old. So my pops never met his mother. Never met his mother. Then he was with my what would be my great grandmother. My great grandmother treated him like a fucking like a true stepchild. Like he was just there for the money. She was just there for the money. She was just there to get the check that my grandfather was sending her every month for him. He never got his money. My mom on her side in that same space. So on both ends of that spectrum, my pops has resentment. My pops has resentment. My mom has resentments. My pops has rejection wounds. My mom has abandonment issues. These are the psychological points in which I came through. So the entire narrative that the reason that I'm saying this is a lot when we think about the traditional system, the traditional aspect, I want a traditional man and I want a traditional woman and I want a woman to submit to me and I want a man to, i.e., I want to become a man's purpose. This is the survival. We look at the survival narrative. I want a man to become that aspect. I want to become, you feel me? Because in the aspects, when we think about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, in the highest sense, there's a balance. There's a reason that they come together and it's in balance. There's a reason that they say when two come together, it's 100%. Because the divine masculine aspect is 60%. The divine masculine aspect is 60% masculine, 40% feminine. The 40% of the feminine aspect. The divine feminine is 60% feminine and 40% of the masculine aspect. That's how these so when they come together, it's always, if you look at it from if you put it on a fraction, 60-40, 60-40. The divine masculine in its highest aspect means it's moving with inside of its purpose. It moves with inside of its purpose. One of the things that we have to break with the aspects of a lot of the traumatic narratives that were based upon trauma that I learned is a lot of the narratives that we tried to subscribe to, they were based upon survival. They were based on survival. When something is based on survival, it's based on eternal effects to bring it into balance. So remember what I said about the aspects of thinking about it, like think about that aspect. You didn't have to you weren't being your own man. You weren't being more woman. You weren't more feminine because you know how to cook, clean, and take care of yourself. You weren't being more masculine because you working. You're moving based in a lack of space. See, one of the things that we have to break down is understanding that you are moving in the lack thereof. Therefore, you are moving in the wound. Moving in the wound is the aspect of moving in the lack thereof. You are moving in the lack thereof. You are moving in the lack thereof masculine presence. That created the fracture, the fragments, i.e. the wound. My pops, never meeting his mother, circumvented to trying to prove himself to his mom, still trying to prove himself to his stepmother. Accept me, accept me, accept me. He was moving within the masculine wounds. He was moving in the wounded masculine sense. So stuck inside of that survival narrative, remember, you only can emulate from that space the same way that my great grandmother was getting his check, the same way that my great grandmother was getting his check was the same way he gave his check. My check, that was the same stream of thought that my pops kept getting his. My pops would give his check to my mom at the end of every week. That was his sense of control. I gave her the money. I gave her the money. I still don't know I don't know what she's doing. I trust her to do with it what she need to do with it because he's still living through that trauma. My pops found out about that. I want to say, what age you find out about that, Pops? He found out around he was 15, 16. But no, around 8, around 15, 16. He found out that his mama wasn't his mom. He found out around age 15 and 16. So his emotional stunting was stopped at 15. When he found out about what happened to his mother, it took him back again to that point to when he was born. So now when we think about when we think about that synapses or that wavelength of fear that led to that point, that was the point of it being reconstituted. Your trauma will continue to reconstitute itself even if you didn't know nothing about it. This is what we mean when we talk about your generational trauma, the shit's in your bloodstream until it's resolved. It's first resolving yours and then understand this is when we talk about the aspects of you healing 7 years forward, 7 years back, all that it has to be resolved. My pops didn't resolve those aspects. So everything that came into that aspect became his punishment and reward system. On the other end, for my mother, in that traditional networking, and I remember when I was little, I remember my traumatic event when I was little, and I was like, why don't my mom just leave my pops? Why don't my mom just leave? Why don't my mom just leave? With the shit, my pops going through my pops being under his, why didn't my mom just leave? Why didn't my mom just leave? I didn't understand the whole background story to why my mom didn't leave. It's deeper than just saying, it's deeper than using the victim complex of, sometimes it's hard. It's deeper than that. When we're doing this internal work, we got to go deeper beyond that fucking surface. One of the things I always push when I'm dealing with my clients is we got to go beyond that fucking point of just where the trauma rests on the surface and get into that little part. There's deeper aspects to it. There's deeper parts to the story. You just have to know how to ask the question. Whenever we go through the traumatic aspect and we're just trying to try to get just enough, 9 times out of 10, when you first start going through your shadow work, you start going through that healing process, you're looking for answers. One of the things I was doing earlier on, I was looking for answers. That's all I would ever do. I was looking for fucking answers. Answers are only based on the level of where my perspective is at. So if it does not fit the narrative of my perspective, I don't care what that answer is, my mind will continue to kick it out. That means you can keep hearing the same. Give you an example. Your idea of what a man is or your idea of what a woman is, based on your perspective, through the aspect of what you think a traditional man is or a traditional woman is. That shit's based on through the wounds inside of that space. The first thing that a lot of us don't, the one thing I didn't want to accept was, nigga, I'm trying to make every relationship my purpose. I'm gonna start with the fellas, then we'll slide over to the ladies. For the fellas, a lot of times for us sitting inside of our spaces, a lot of the things that we doing inside of these spaces for ourselves is we're trying to reconstitute the events by emulating the events in order for us to finally prove that we can protect somebody. I remember going through every point in time when my mom and my pops would fight. I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and watching them go back and forth or them arguing or whatever. And me standing there, not knowing what to do. Body goes into fucking full on shutdown. I don't know what an emotional shutdown is. I don't know what a breakdown is. Having my earliest breakdowns when I was little, that was instilled. It became a catalyst for me. So when I'm inside of relationships, when I was having conversations, whenever somebody's voice raised to a certain point, I'd shut the fuck down. My whole fucking mindset shut the fuck down. Because I only had two switches. Either I'm going to shoot or I'm going to be really, really quiet. I'm not going to say anything. I don't know how to regulate this energy or this emotion that I'm feeling. I don't know what this emotion is. I'm going to call it disrespect. When in reality, it was the inability, when in reality, on the surface, it was my inability of being heard. And then deep, the perception was me not being heard. The perception was not me not being heard, me not being honored, me not being valued. On the internal narrative, it was me not understanding how to regulate, how to speak. Now I'm creating situations where I have to speak, where I have to yell, where I get to get it off. I get to yell, I get to act a certain way. I get to yell, I get to bark, so now I think about the environments that I created based on me trying to make something else my purpose. Let me stand up for, now I'm trying to be in this relationship. I'm gonna stand up for this chick over here. Things of that nature. Because now I'm building based on the traditional guidelines that I've had based on survival. All I ever understood was if I get a job, after I get the job, I gotta be in a relationship. In order to get the relationship, that means I gotta get the car, I gotta have the place, or I gotta have the money for the room or whatever, things of that nature. That was everything that would paint out that realm of pageantry. That was pageantry. I could not stuck inside of that state of pageantry with yourself, of your traumatic experience. It doesn't matter what you do, what information you can go read every fucking volume of work of Carl Jung or whatever it may be. You can go read the whole fucking pyramid coffin text, every fucking text. You can go read it all. But you're only going to be able to apply it to the level of where you are at, who you are. You're only going to be able to apply it to that point. So your perception of it will change as you start to heal, as you start to resolve. Because the only reason as you start to resolve, as I started resolving these aspects, my abandonment issues, and looking at those aspects, and really like, damn, nigga, I did kind of, damn, all my relationships were the exact same. All my relationships were the exact fucking same. The way that I was attracting chicks every chick that I attracted was the exact way, same way. And I thought it was okay. I was in my comfort zone. As long as I had a job, okay, cool, I can fuck with a chick. Because that's part of my purpose. Because I needed something to attach my accomplishments to. Remember, you only can go as far as you went inside of yourself. So if you living off rejection and you got your job and that pacifies your rejection wound, they love me at my job, so I ain't going through rejection. You still need in your physical world, you need some form of rejection. So now this is the aspect when we start building up. I'm going to say this, then we're going to build into it more. A woman can never be a man's purpose. A woman should never look to be a man's purpose. Because a man's purpose, as he grows, as he develops, as he evolves, is going to be used, abused, broken down, built up, destroyed, so it can be rebuilt as he comes into the higher aspects of himself. A woman, because ladies, now it's on the ladies, so we're going to talk to the ladies. Ladies, a man can never be your project. A man can never be your project because your projects, the stuff that you work on, those are to develop your skill set. Those are to develop your internal skill set as you evolve and elevate. It's a catalyst. It will be destroyed. The same thing as a man's purpose. It will be destroyed, broken down, used, abused, argued with, fought with. You see how that means with the aspect you keep externalizing things? So you think about those relationships where you were like, I was a good woman. I was a good chick to that nigga. I did all of these things. But in all of those things, what skill set did you develop? In all of these aspects, what skill set did you develop? What was your skill set attached to? See, it's hard for, like, when we think about the relationship aspect, you attach, because of us, especially in our fucking community, we attach our accolades to trauma. You will attach every accolade to trauma. If it wasn't for my mom, if it wasn't for my dad walking out on us and my mom telling my dad that we weren't a piece of shit, I wouldn't have got to fucking college. Remember, whatever you attach that accomplishment to, guess what? It got to keep happening. So the skill set that you develop, this when we think about that aspect of the modern woman, because I've been observing it long enough, and I've been sitting back, I'm working with my clients and shit, but I've been thinking about it long enough, but it's time, it's like, nigga, got that tap. The reason of that process is for the lack thereof. Most of the things that you did inside of that space and the skills that you developed, everything you were doing based on the pageantry of being strong, of being independent, of being a real nigga, of being a whatever this aspect that you want to call yourself, was in the aspect of gaining credit for it. That pageantry, all you can do is get pageantry for credit. All you can do for pageantry is get credit. Pageantry is that glamour that you put on you on the stage, you in the real world, you doing all of your shit. All you can get is credit for it. All you can get is someone to buy into your illusion of where you're at. This is when we think about the illusionary space. A man that has no purpose can only create to a certain degree and will create a space to where his level of protection, his level of provision is at its highest point. That's why you always having those arguments. Bitch, you wouldn't be shit without me, and she wouldn't like this, and this. Is because both of y'all, in the aspects you're trying to gain credit based on what you do, what you don't do, what you have and what you don't have. What you do and what you don't do, what you have and what you don't have. None of it is based on who you truly are. None of it is based on who you truly are. I had to sit with myself and realize, like, a lot of the shit that I'm doing is not based on who I am. It is, I can't establish my wealth, my value, my wealth, I couldn't establish my worth, my wealth, my value. I couldn't establish my structure, my standard without really sitting with the aspects of who the fuck I was. Because those standards that I subscribe to, the societal norms that I subscribe to, were only based on a certain version of me. And whenever that shit was naturally tested, because this is an inherently flawed space, the shit's supposed to break down. Every time that shit was challenged, and now my anger, now I got a chance to be angry. Oh my God, it's hitting my rejection. These motherfuckers keep talking about me. I wrote a post on my Facebook page the other day. I was giving an example of my self-inventory or things I say during my self-inventories at night. And I was giving the example when I woke up that rising, and I put the examples of what I say in the aspects of my affirmations during my self-reflection. One of my aspects that I said was, when I wrote out the journal prompt, was I used to hate when people would talk shit about me or say whatever the fuck they wanted to say, what they said about me. Until I sat with the fact that the real reason I didn't like what motherfuckers were saying about me was because I wasn't ready to let go of that version of myself that they were talking about. I just kept doing it. I had a reason. I'm tired of feeling disrespected, i.e., rejected. I'm tired of feeling disrespected, i.e., abandoned. I'm tired of feeling rejected, i.e., not being accepted, separated. Why is this shit so strong within me? Why is this cord so hard to break? This is when we get into the aspects of when you're dealing with your shadow and that generational shadow. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I'm thinking about my emotional shadow. I'm thinking about the shadow, the generational shadow. The reason that shit was so strong, and then it became so strong because I remember having whole conversations with my pops, whole conversations, or rather, it would be lectures from my pops, and my pops had a perception of me because he was projecting through his space of himself. The things that he saw himself doing, some of those things he saw me doing some of the things that he was doing. Or he thought I was doing the same shit. His unresolved became my unresolved. His debt became my debt. I was my father's purpose. I was my mother's project. I was my pop's purpose and my mother's project. Say it one more time. I was my pop's purpose and my mother's project. Being my mother's project, I remember the normal things that she taught me inside of that space were things I remember there were certain things that she didn't show shit. The things that she showed to me and my brother, she didn't show to my sisters. The things that she had us doing, she never showed to my sisters. But I'm in the environment. I can't solve anything in the environment. I can't see anything. I can't see anything other than until I step out of the environment. So when I was stepping out of the environment, then I was able to see it was like, wait, my pops is the equivalent to whatever my mom did, whatever my mom accepted a certain level when it came to my pops because of the stuff that she didn't have, the stuff that she didn't get. So when we think about that traditional sense and thinking because you've been through traumatic events and you got to attach your traumas to accolades, if my mom constantly throughout her childhood when she was told that she was sick, things that she was sick, that she was, when she was little, she couldn't hang, she couldn't do certain things. That's what my mother is living through. My mother literally emulated a space based on her being strong, based on her not going back, based on her coming into her space. That's from the space that my mother created. That's the narratives that my mother created. My mother was living through those narratives. This is when we think about the aspects of your mother and your parents will give your mother and your parents will teach you a life that doesn't even exist. The life that we're living, the world that you living in, the example of the world that you living in right now is nothing more than the projection from what your grandparents, your great grandparents, your auntie, your uncle, what they saw, what they went through, what they didn't want to do. It's the debt being paid forward. It's the debt coming forward. You can't solve this debt. We can't solve this debt with the outdated protocols. You can't solve these debts with outdated protocols. That's what we keep trying. The thing that keeps hindering a lot of people from the aspects of their work, you're trying to use outdated protocols in order to keep. You're attaching those outdated protocols are attached to the original traumatic original traumatic algorithm. That's why it seemed to work until a certain point. Man, it's not working anymore. Women ain't doing this anymore, and men ain't doing this anymore. Men ain't being men, women ain't being women. Because the men back then, they weren't men. They were emotional, and this is what you got to be honest with. Your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your father, your uncle, as much as they were great men on that external surface, based on what they did and who they were, what they did and what they had, made them great men. What they were able to do, what they were able to provide, made them great men. What made your mother, your grandmother, your auntie a great person was based on what they did and what they had. It was never based on who they were. Because who they were is the debt that became paid forward into you. The who they actually were is not a debt that's paid before you. That's who you are. Some of you don't even realize that we talk about working with ancestors. We talk about working with ancestors and working with that energy and working with your ancestors. Some of you don't even realize that down that timeline, you became, when you were born, you became, when we think about the project, you became the father that your mother always wanted. I became the father that my mother always wanted. The brother, the protection she always wanted. From the aspects of my father, I became the man, the boy that my mother would approve of. My mother would have lived. My pop's going through my mother would have lived if I did this. That's when we think about it, that's what you're living through. That traditional point was based on survival, and it was based on trauma. They started the building process based on their trauma. Men stopped that aspect of, man, I ain't got to be there for that child. Women stopped that process. I can do it by myself. That's the traumatic response. One thing that I remember I sat with and I had to say to myself over and over and over again as a mantra was, I wish I am grateful, but I have a bitter emotion. I had to sit with this emotion. My mother and my father, in that instance, I wish that they lived out their purpose. I wish that they were able to live out their purpose. I wish that they were able to live out their purpose. And that means when I'm sitting there and I'm doing that I'm doing reflection work. And I'm going through that process with myself. I'm recalling these emotions. Sometimes when you're sitting there, that's like when you're first working, especially when you're first working with ancestors and spirits, when you first working with your ancestors and your spirits and you're venerating them, you have to listen to their story. You have to listen to their story. But you can't listen to their story until you listen to your own. So you can see how those stories link together. You can't come into certain spaces with yourself until you sat inside of that space and you understood your own. Or else you're just going to, okay, you're just going to keep doing the same thing. That traditional mindset, because you never had a purpose. I'm going to give you here's the game on like how I realized that, nigga, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't understand what my fucking purpose was. I didn't understand what my purpose was. I didn't know what my purpose fucking was. Half of the damn time. I didn't know what the fuck my purpose was, what the fuck I was doing, what I needed to be. I didn't know what the fuck I was really doing. Because every time I sat inside of the space, every conversation that I had inside of the fucking space was always, okay, cool, that woman is my purpose. So now naturally anything that I learned is I can't apply it to myself. I got to apply it outside of myself. I have to see it work. This is when we think about when they say men are visual. When men are visual. We have to see it work. We have to see it. So now you think about inside of that space. I just want a woman to submit to me. It sounds kind of it's an asinine thought process. Women need to submit. Why? What are they submitting to? The natural process of the divine feminine. The feminine energy is to curate and facilitate. To curate and facilitate. Before the divine feminine can curate and facilitate, the space must be you can't ask for a chick. You feel what I'm saying? Or I want a woman in my life if you're still emotionally 12 years old. You can. A lot of us did do that aspect. When you're emotionally 12 years old, because you only can build out to the level of a 12-year-old development. Your space is built on the emotional foundation of a 12-year-old. Think about you as a 12-year-old and you sat outside. Think about you being 12 years old trying to build a house. The emotional development of you building a house when you're 12 years old. The house you built when you were 12 years old versus the house that you would build in the aspect of you being in present, two different fucking houses. The room that you create, the spaces that you created inside of your mind in order for you to go hide in. Because you've been creating those same rooms, and those rooms are those access points. Those rooms are those access points from the mind of a 12-year-old. You only emulate from the resolved aspects of that of a 12-year-old. That means as long as you can as long as you can reconstitute what happened up to you up till age 12, whether you've looked at it or not, you're all right. So that fight between your mom and your dad, or your mom and her boyfriends, or whatever it may have been, your mom could have been a bottom bitch to a pimp. Now you seem to always attract women, because it's the game. Now you always seem to attract women that seem to always have the same broken narrative. They all seem to be hurt. They all seem to need something. And since you're still blaming yourself and not sitting with that blame with yourself of your pops looked you in your face and smacked your mom across the fucking mouth and said, bitch, shut up. And you saw that, that's what you're replaying. Your perspective is seeing that, and that's what it feels. That's what it feels. And now that you're older, mentally, you're still the same age emotionally, the same way you started going to school and things like that, you started going to school and the environment that you were in, now in your adult mind, the adult frame, the hyper-adolescent frame, the only way that you know that because you have to match physical with physical. This is when we start talking about the aspect of vices and urges. You got to match physical with physical. So if you go save the day with her, dun, 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 her highest level is physical. Her mindset of dealing with neutrality to now recreate something to facilitate, to curate and facilitate, is to curate, you're her hero, and facilitate her skill set based on her living out her trauma. So now y'all trauma bond. Now y'all done got together. You done went with her. Y'all went, got some drinks, whatever it may have been. Y'all end up laying up. Y'all end up fucking. That's the seal of that. That's the seal of that energy. So now she will continue to cultivate and facilitate what it was that you led her from. Because if a woman is inside of her wounded aspect, she is not yet evaluated her emotions or where her emotions lead her. where her emotions lead her. Her emotion of feeling rejected is what's leading her to you. On the same instance, when we think about women dealing with men, you weren't attractive. Motherfucker was attached to that motherfucker was attached to the pheromones of your fucking fear. Shorty smelled your fear. Shorty smelled your fear. Shorty smelled your insecurity. Shorty smelled your doubt. And since she has not studied her energy, she damn sure don't know what your energy is. The only thing's worse that comes into that space based on women cultivating and facilitating, whether in the lower aspects or the higher aspects, is that if they learn how to cultivate fear, doubt, insecurity, they'll know how to facilitate their energy in the way to attract fear, doubt, insecurity. The same way that you've attached your car, you attached your job, you attached all of your shit to fucking fear. That's why every time it comes to the peak, I'm gonna give you some key on to the application process. Give you a key of the application process. When you stuck in the light of aspects of being the pageantry, one way to explain it is think about you have a job. Think about you have a job. You have a job. I.e., you working at Comcast, Infinity, wherever you working at the job, right? You need some time off. In your mind, the first thing that you think is, man, they don't give me that time off, man. You feel what I'm saying? The reason that you don't get what you need to get is because you ain't built it out yet. You ain't built it out. You did it based on fear. Because remember, pageantry is the state of trying to get credit for what you've already done. So let's say you saying, okay, cool, you want to take a trip, you're going to take that birthday weekend off or whatever, you take that birthday weekend off. You know you need to work a certain amount of hours to even get the money for that trip. So you go in there, you request the time off, and they say no. You get upset because they said no, that you cannot get that time the fuck off. Why are you mad? You only can negotiate what you bring to the space. If you bring unresolved to the space, you only can negotiate the unresolved. If you have resolve bringing it to the space, then you can negotiate your resolve. I remember my first time. This is when I was my last job ever. Before I fired Red Lobster. I remember I was taking off time I put in time to take off for my birthday. The first time that I did it, somebody approved it. They got upset. They were like, well, we can't take you out. I already got the plane tickets. I already had my plane tickets, rental car. I already had my shit lined up. I went to my boss called me to the office, was like, yo, Los, we can't give you these days off. I was like, well, I didn't request Valentine's Day off, so I'll be here for Valentine's Day. But unless you're going to reimburse me for the plane ticket I already paid for, my hotel room I already paid for, my rental car I already paid for, unless you're going to reimburse me $3,500 or we work out some type of deal, my services will not be available for that day. He looked at me. He was like, all right, Los, go on, you had the days off. I was able to negotiate based on my resolve. You know what I'm saying? The second time that this happened, That day after, while I'm on my death day weekend, I request the next week. I request the next birthday off. I said I'm gonna go for the gusto. I'm gonna take off Valentine's Day as well. I'm gonna take off fucking Valentine's Day. That day, while I was sitting there, I was like, I like this beachfront spot. I'm gonna get this beachfront spot. This is my first time doing ritual work, applying the ritual work. I was going out there. It was a full moon around it. I was like, ooh, this is my first time doing ritual work. Really doing really doing my own spell, doing my own work. And I sat out there. I did my work. That same day, I was like, I like this spot. I'm gonna book this spot again. Before I left from that weekend, I went and said, hey, can I book this same time next year? I went and looked at plane tickets, did the same. I went through the whole process, did it right there inside of that space where that energy was right there where I could apply it. I could apply the energy in real time inside of that space. The next time I came along, if you rock with me, go onto my YouTube channel. There is a lecture that I did. Somebody Vision is my YouTube channel. You go on there. There is a lecture that I did called Heart of Mind. In the beginning of that lecture, I break down like, yo, they said I wasn't going to be able to get this day off because it was Valentine's Day, but I had my boss mad as fuck inside of that space. I was able to use my resolve. I resolved everything. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Based on who I was. It wasn't based on what I had and what I did. It was based on who the fuck I was. I was owning who the fuck I was. See, the aspect of us building, for fellas, for us, building out your purpose. For building out your purpose. Fellas, for us building out our fucking purpose. Your purpose can never, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, it was one of the Savior's days. He had a speech and he was like, your woman is never your pleasure. Your purpose is your pleasure. Layman's terms, you'll never lose money chasing, you'll always lose money chasing bitches, but you'll never lose bitches chasing money. We've all heard this in multiple different messages in multiple different ways. How that breaks down into is, as long as I'm inside of my purpose, establishing my purpose, my mission within my purpose, my edge within my purpose, I can always apply the mechanics to naturally populate a space based on whatever the level of my purpose is. If the level of my purpose, this is the aspect of the application process. If the first stages in my application process are to learn what being a protector is, as an example of me being a protector is, the first lines of my shadow work, my internal healing work is going to sit with, this is when you're having self-inventory at night, your self-inventory at night and your self-reflection in the rising, and you asking, I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to say to my spirit team. I don't know what to say to my spiritual. I don't know how to ask the guides and things of that nature. That's what I'm here for. As the guide, that's what I'm here for. We can go through that process. But the first thing that I gotta become honest with, I don't know what protection is. I don't feel protected. I don't know what protection is. So I can't so if I wake up, let's use the example, because motherfucker, we want to use the pageantry of affirmations, but we don't apply nothing to the affirmation. That's the intention. If I wake up and say that I'm in gratitude, I rise in gratitude, I am gratitude, that means everything in that day I am in gratitude for, whether it be negative or whether it be positive. I am grateful and in gratitude for the negative as well as the positive. Because there can be some shit that's very, very positive. You could have got a raise at your job. They could have gave you a raise, 25 cents. They could have gave you a raise, 25 cents at your job. 25 cents. Gave you a nice little raise at your job. Yeah, they gave me a raise at my job. Okay, they gave you a raise at your job. But it don't serve you any purpose. It don't serve you any purpose. Don't serve you any purpose. That other job could have hit you up. That job that you really wanted could have hit you up. They could have hit you up. And they made a phone call to your job, and your job said, we got to get this nigga a raise. He can't go nowhere. That was a negative. In the space, this was the negative. This negative served you more purpose than that positive. I don't like the term. I don't subscribe to the term of think positive and don't think negative. My mindset has always been in think constructively. Think constructively. Because if I think constructively, that means no matter if it's positive and or negative, I'm always going to bring it to its highest point. If it's something negative, I have gratitude for it. I can bring it to its highest point. I can work it through the fucking shadows, work on that shadow and bringing it to the highest point. If it's positive, I can do the same exact work. So as fellas, I'm breaking this down, we build into our purpose. If my first level of application is to learn what protection is, let me look at my job. let me look at my job real quick. How my job works. You know what I'm saying? How does my job work? You know what I'm saying? How does my job provide protection? Something that simple. When we think about it, how does my job provide protection? What are they protecting? The job protects its assets. The job protects its assets. But how? Because it has standards. Am I really triggered at my job that I don't like my job? Why am I triggered at my job that they don't uphold certain standards that they said they wanted us to uphold? Am I upset with them that they don't uphold their standards? Let me ask myself a real fucking question, because I said I'm in gratitude for everything giving me my lesson and helping me build that unbridled trust. What are my standards? What are my standards? The divine masculine man that sits into the aspects of his purpose, that sits within his purpose, his standard is above every space. His standard is based on who he is, not what he does, not what he has. I built my purpose. My standards are based on who I am, not what I do, not what I have. Because the moment that you keep putting your standards on what you have, the moment that you lose it, your standards go away. The moment that you put your standards on what you do, the moment you don't have it, your standards go away. The moment you pull back, the standard of you wanting that woman to be your therapist, shorty to be your therapist. That's basically all what it really is actually, that's exactly what it is. It's actually, you're just creating points of high stress. You're creating the narrative for your high stress points. The standard that you create in an external narrative, you're creating high break points of where your stress can't go past. That's all you're building. When we think about that traditional narrative, that's why when you listen, like if you listen to the podcast and the shorties and the chicks and these motherfuckers that be in the Unreal podcast talking about, I want a man that makes this, I want a woman that does this. Everything that they usually say or do is going to be based on a standard that's based on, it's an unrealistic standard. Because through pageantry, all I can create is the imagination of the unrealistic pattern. I can't apply to it. I haven't done the internal work to apply to that space. Remember that point of neutrality? You'll say something up to this point, or the point of neutrality, in order for it to void out. Most of the things that we build in the aspects of relationship, when we build relationships, having the shit that you do inside of that relationship from that wounded perspective, the reason that it hurt so bad, the reason that it challenged your worth and your value is because it was against your natural rhythm. You are already living in your, you are already going against your natural rhythm. You're already going against your you're already going against your natural rhythm. Most of us live inside of our spaces. What we're used to is a high conflict and dysfunction. High conflict and dysfunction. Because of that traumatic experience and the stuff that works with trauma, it's always going to be based on a level of dysfunction. Dysfunction leads to displacement, leads to the aspect, leads to always to the state of detriment. When you're working it, when we're on the fellas right now, I'm gonna switch to the ladies. In the aspects of your purpose leads to order, because order is chaos and chaos is order. Order and chaos is a natural aspect of flow. You know that you're in a state of order, and you know you're going through the cycles of order and chaos because all chaos is potential. Chaos is potential. Chaos is potential. This is the potential process to apply said application, said formula of said application to said space to bring myself to another level of order. But if I'm always used to dysfunction, that means I need to attach my trauma to something. I need to attach my wounded perspective, my mother wounds, my father wounds, my wounds of what the story my mom said. I'm trying to prove that I can be a better man type shit. It's always gonna lead to a point of dysfunction. That detriment or that wound always has to lead to a dysfunction. It only plays out till there's more dysfunction. This is why I say a woman can't be your purpose. You grafted into that identity of, and you subscribe to these aspects. A man can have a man fuck with multiple chicks because that's how it's always been. That was based on trauma. We have to be honest with the outdated narratives that we subscribe to were based upon trauma. The only reason that a man had multiple women at a certain capped out at a point in time is because the niggas was going to war. They needed bodies. So of course this nigga can sleep with multiple women. It was always a business juncture to create bodies, to create more bodies. If you go into the aspects of the diaspora of slavery, it was always to create more bodies. It was always just create more bodies. The lowest level of creation inside of that space was to create more bodies. That was the only purpose, to create more bodies. That was it. That's an outdated narrative. We are now inside of a space. We're now inside of this space where you feel what I'm saying? Now it's time to, now we're restoring. There's your purpose and your new legacy. This is when we talk about the aspects of actually, this is what I mean. When I break this down, this is the aspect of actually rebuilding. See, the aspect that we keep getting stuck in is after the healing process, we're not actually going through that healing process. We're not going through that internal work. There's no point of you gathering that information, doing all of that work if you're not going to build to advance. If I'm not I'm not advancing anything. See, the application process is to advance. You got stuck within the narrative of this shit's over. This shit's over. The same way this shit's over sounds exactly the same as when your grandparents, great grandparents inside of that space were sitting inside of that space and said the same shit of end of days. We in the end of days. We don't know what time and what day and what month and what hour and what time it's going to happen, but we inside of the end of days. All you're doing is grafting over old protocols and naming them something else. All you're doing is grafting new old protocols and saying that you're creating them as something else. You know what I'm saying? That's all you're doing. We have to go through, this is the aspect of that building aspect. We have to go through the process of building. But in order to build, we have to actually we have to create the new, you can't keep building on the same fucking foundation. That traditional monologue of, okay, that person becomes my purpose, this person becomes my project. That's all that's the highest level you're going to get to. Your first project, this person right here was my purpose. That was my purpose. But who are you? Your purpose cannot be based on who you are and what you have. I had to understand and look at myself like, yo, my purpose is a lot of times is always based on who I am and what I was. That's what my purpose was always built inside of that narrative. I lived inside of that narrative. I kept moving inside of that narrative. My purpose was always based on what I did and who the fuck I was. What I did and what I had. If I didn't have it, felt lost. When I didn't have it, it wasn't the now I feel that I'm lost or now that I feel that I'm alone and things of that nature. In reality, I was being made present. I was being made present in a lot of those spaces. I couldn't use the same glamour. I was being made present inside of that space. The traumatic imprint makes it so you're not present. So that's why you'll keep subscribing to, but society said this is what it is to be a man. Society said this is what it is to be a woman. I just wanted somebody to make me a priority. I want somebody. It's improbable. You have to I can only negotiate what I've done with self. In the aptitude, as I'm working inside of my purpose and developing my purpose, the alignment changes. What comes into my space changes. I'm not going to look at it said the same. I'm not going to subscribe. Wherever I go to a space, this is when the aspects of you don't know your energy, so you don't know what you attract. Therefore, you do not know where you're being led to. If I have a low level of emotional intelligence, you get what I'm saying? If I have a low level of emotional intelligence, that means I'm going to be led to spaces of low level of emotional intelligence. Same space. It don't matter what physical shit I have or what physical shit I do. I'm still in the same fucking crib. I'm in the same fucking spot. I'm in the third floor. You're still in the same burning fucking house. You're still in the same burning house. So of course, if we both still in the same burning house, both in the same burning crib, what am I really applying? You know what I'm saying? When we think about the aspects of the traditional man and the traditional woman, where was that grafted from? See, the aspect of application is really sitting there where that shit was grafted from. If you want to be honest about the aspect of the traditional man and the traditional roles of man and women that a lot of people subscribe to, that shit wasn't created until about 1950, 1960. Go do the research. That shit didn't come into grafting until 1950, 1960. The 1950s and 60s. That shit didn't come into play. That shit did not come into play to the 1950s and 60s. Half of the stuff that we keep doing if we keep saying certain systems are outdated, then we have to take the thought process of, if these systems are outdated, that means the information based in these systems is outdated. But I must first truly understand that narrative of what it actually is in that space and what it actually was and where it was grafted from. What was its purpose? And that's when you got to get out of your emotions. The deeper work that the work of the aspects of the occultist, the alchemist, you going into these higher levels of science require balancing your emotions. What you've seen over the last, what we've seen, what I observed, what you've seen over the last up 10 years of the New Age spirituality and the New Age healing and all of the aspect, the New Age aspects. What you've seen is developed based on the avoiding the internal aspects. Is avoiding those internal aspects. You get what I'm saying? That's what you've seen. It was based on avoiding those aspects of self. So everybody talks about, oh, there's another shift. There's a shift coming. There's a shift coming. There's a full moon. There's a full moon. And then you want to connect to the aspect someone saying, oh, it's another full moon. This moon means this. But if I ask you the question, this is what I ask a lot. This is what I ask my clients when I'm working with my clients. What does that moon mean to you? What does that moon mean to you? The events that you are subscribing to that you're angry about, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? Not to womankind, not to mankind, not to this definition that you gave yourself. In order to be a man that I've been told to do, what does it mean to you? See, that's the personal aspect. Until I understand what it means to me, I do not understand my intentions. My intentions will naturally be unclear. If my intentions are unclear, my affirmations are unclear. If my affirmations are unclear, that means my routine, my discipline, and my ritual becomes unclear. If my rituals and disciplines are unclear, that means the results shall become unclear. And you see, it just keeps going on and on and on. That's the aspect that's breaking that aspect. Until you sit in that space, until I sat inside this space and still sit in this space and it was sitting inside of this space and then giving myself the honor of creating that said space. See, the abdication process means that you continue in the aspects of discipline. I talk about this with my clients all the time. When you start meditation is to level you up into, meditation is to make you still the thoughts and become aware of your thoughts. It's not about clearing your mind. It's about it's about, okay, cool. I've cleared my thoughts. I am now sitting still with my thoughts. Who is running these thoughts with me? Let me run these thoughts through. All right, cool. It isn't me. I'm not present. I wasn't present for having these thoughts. Who was present during having these thoughts? And bringing that into that space. Bringing aware to your thought processes, the energy that you put out. From the aspect of you meditating, that's when you lead into the aspects of when people talk about astral projection. Astral projection is only you going deeper inside of the scapes of your own fucking mind. So if you got a lot of unresolved sexual trauma, if you got a lot of unresolved sexual deviancy and sexual trauma, you're always going to end up in some bitches. You're always going to end up in some shorty house, some shorty room. You always going to end up in some dude crib because you got unresolved sexual aspect, hypersexualized aspects inside of in your subconscious. You have to deal with those things first before you can go further through that energy point. Learning how to use that energy. I remember the first time we used this, break this down. I remember the first time I was doing I remember the first time on my YouTube channel, Somni Vision, I was doing a lecture. And it was the second lecture, and I was talking about the aspects of the sacred energy exchange. I remember when I was doing the research and studying and doing the aspects in tantric healing and things of that nature. And I remember sitting there and I was like, every conversation that I have is having sex. Every conversation that I have Whether it's me with my brother, one of my homie, one of my homeboys, or I'm having a conversation with a chick, or I'm having a conversation with a group of people. If I'm having a conversation with a group of people, we having an orgy. We having an orgy. If I'm having a conversation with my homeboy, we are having a sexual. But in order for me to, this is the key. In order for me to take that from the state of pageantry, nigga, I ain't gay, and I ain't gay, I don't go that way, I ain't fucking with. Some of y'all niggas got some unresolved shit when you were running trains with your boy. Some of y'all got some unresolved aspects. You were running trains with your boy, or y'all running two mans on chicks, two men on them shorties. Y'all running chains. Y'all dicks is rubbing together inside a shorty, and one of y'all liked it, and that's unresolved in your fucking mind. Some of you niggas, the reason that you're upset with the aspect of nigga I ain't, because that you can't advance that energy. The sacred energy exchange is all energy is sacred. You exchange it, it creates something. You can't create to the higher degrees. You can't create in the higher degrees of self. You can't create in the higher degrees of love, in that love-based state, if I got unresolved shit in the aspects of fear. If I got unresolved aspects in my fear, I can't create a anything, and I can't build anything in a love-based states of self. If my shit is still stuck in fear, it don't matter what the fuck I try to create, it will always peak out in a state of neutrality. The highest peak of neutrality that keeps stopping you, like I'm gonna break down the example. You could have went through a whole entire process of saying, you could have had this whole dream in your life of wanting to be a husband and a father, a mother and a mother, a wife and a mother. You could have had that whole entire idea. The first thing that you have to look when I'm working with my clients, the first thing that you have to look at into that dialogue when we look at how your child was born and how you had kids, because we break this down in fucking sessions. Your first child, and accepting what your first child was, accepting what your children were. Your children were projects. Your children were your purpose. Your children were your projects. But not understanding the aptitude of the higher levels of projects and of your project, as I was talking about, we talked about earlier when we started this, the aspect of your projects for the divine feminine, your projects are to cultivate the lessons and the skill sets in alignment with what you will cultivate. The 60% of the divine feminine is cultivation. No, is cultivation. And that 40% of the divine feminine, which is the masculine concept, is the aspect of facilitating. If you have not learned to regulate emotions, raise your level of emotional awareness and emotional intelligence, you will always facilitate. You will always facilitate for your divine feminine aspects to cultivate through experiences to learn those lessons until it's resolved. The same aspect goes for the divine masculine. An aspect of the divine masculine the divine masculine is based upon their purpose, and inside of their purpose is based on the aspect of their missions. Their missions are based on the emotional rhythm. If you don't, people like this, niggas is really dead emotionally or have low levels of emotion. That's when you say you want to be a gangster and you want to be out there in the streets. Having the motherfuckers that are out there in them streets that is running around shooting and doing all that wild ass shit, trying to be a gangster, trying to be this hard fucking nigga, they're fucking stupid. They're emotionally stunted. Their emotions don't go past a certain level of peak. They're still in that 5 and 8 year old range of acting as the men that they didn't see inside of their life. They still emotionally 8 years old. That's why it's hard to have that conversation with him. And then this is when we get deeper into the aspect of why a man can't be your project. A man will never be your project because your projects are designed to elevate your skill sets. Your purpose for divine masculine, your purpose is designed to be broken, to be destroyed, to be broken, destroyed, used, abused, and rebuilt over and over and over again as you're elevating your emotions, as you're elevating to your highest point of yourself. That's why a woman can never be your purpose. If you ever make a woman your purpose, do you ever notice when a man made you his priority and made you his purpose from that wounded perspective, you were used, abused, got cheated on, got knocked upside the head, all types of wild ass shit. And you never understood why. Because you were made his purpose. A man that does not have discipline cannot sit with his purpose. So you want to, I can help him, I can love him and make him the best. You tried to make him your project. Your project is meant to teach you your skill set. It's supposed to teach you your skill set based on elevation. But you kept using them as projects. You kept trying to use them as projects. You kept trying to use them as projects in the sense of, if I do all of this, I'm a good woman. If I do all of this, if I do all of these things, I'm a good woman. If I do all of these things, I'm a good man. So you put your purpose external. So then you got stuck carrying that aspect in the external aspect. Now we're going into the feminine when we're talking about the aspects of the project, the learning, the understanding, the developing, the cultivation process. The divine feminine naturally cultivates based on their level of where they're at emotionally. It makes this like we have to change and actually talk about the actual bring solutions to the narrative instead of continue saying, well, like, women do this and this, they'll bow down to their boss and bow down to this person and dot 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 dot. The feminine on any level naturally submits to their level of what they can cultivate and what they can facilitate based in their knowing. They know that through the facilitation of that wounded perspective, they got to go to work, they got to pay bills. They got to go to work, they got to pay bills. You get what I'm saying? Got to go to work, got to pay bills. On the other end of that aspect of the perspective, that's what they're going to cultivate because they're trying to cultivate a space of what they believe is protection from their world. Shorty didn't have a dad or what she was taught. She's bringing it into that space. Until she sit with that, you're not going to get her to do anything into that space. But in order for her to sit there and do that, you got to be moving inside of your purpose. See, one of the things that stops us with a lot of the stuff that we keep saying is, for example, here's an example. Just to break down some examples. One of the wildest as examples is if you are. I remember I had a conversation with I was having a conversation a while back. It perplexes me that you can say to yourself and be like, "Yo, I can never be friends with a woman. I can never be friends with a female. I can't be friends with a nigga." That shit would like blow my mind. It would blow my fucking mind. Because I used to think about it into that sort of like, when you look at a chick, because this is some shit that I never subscribed to, so when I looked at it, I was like, that shit don't make no sense. My first thought, I had to learn this process. This is what I mean by updating your system. I had to learn the process I had to learn that there was a difference between sexual attraction and physical attraction. The actual physical attraction and sexual attraction. I had to understand the difference between the two. Because as long as them motherfuckers were together, when I thought physical attraction and sexual attraction were the same shit, I didn't understand the aspects of the energy. If you just coming in, I just finished talking about the aspects of sexual energy, sacred energy exchange. Every conversation you having with motherfuckers, every conversation you having with people is a sacred, a sacred energy exchange. You're exchanging energy to cultivate, to create something automatically, off top, because everything starts as energy. Everything starts as the essence, becomes the thoughts, the emotions, give it the power, and then it makes it a physical aspect. So this is when we talk about the aspects of the traditional narrative of attraction. Physical attraction and sexual attraction are two separate spaces. Sexual attraction is potential energy to cultivate. Physical attraction is in the physical perceptions and perspectives of the image of what that body is, what that person looks like, and how it attaches to what you do and what you have. See, niggas be sitting. That's why women is out. Women and men, we both do the same fucking shit. That's why the first thing that you looked at is the nigga that the like. Let's go back to high school. Let's go back to high school. In school, back in the day, early 2000s, it keeps happening. Whenever you was a dude in school and you wanted to talk to that one girl, but she said you didn't have everything together with yourself, and old buddy was 28 years old, 23, 24, 25, up to 28, up to 30, and he had his car, so he would drive on campus, and he would pick her up and take her to McDonald's or take her to the fast food restaurant and bring her back. You feel what I'm saying? So ever since that sense of imagery, you kept that sense of imagery in order to build out your space. Your space became based on the external of what a person has versus what I don't have, what a person does versus what I won't do or don't do. So you built out your entire space based on that to connect your trauma to. It's easy to attach your shadow to light because that's where your light is connected to. So somebody going through the traumatic experience, of course you're going to attach your shit to the traumatic. Now, this is when we look at the aspect of when we think about the aspect of making that man your project, making shorty your purpose. You're going to attach all of your insecurities, doubts, wounds, everything to that motherfucker's success. Everything that they buy into based on you. That's what you're going to attach to them. As long as you can keep looking for external projects, you don't have to do the internal work. Oh my God, I did all that shit for that. I did all that shit for that dude. I did all that shit for that guy. And the nigga left me insecure and broken. You are already insecure. You are already insecure. What you're calling insecure isn't insecurity. What you're calling insecurity is rejection wound. That rejection wound. Until you deal with that rejection wound, all you're going to do is keep attracting motherfuckers that are going to make you feel less insecure. Fellas, in the aspect of your purpose, as long as you have not resolved that your purpose is not to, you're still living out that purpose of you being the man of the house or being being the man of the house, you're still using that narrative. As long as you're still using that narrative, you're only going to attract women that are based on what you have and what you do. As long as I'm looking for shit based on what I have and what I do, I never cultivate my internal self. I never find my purpose. I don't find my purpose. I never define my purpose. I cannot sit within my purpose. Therefore, I cannot tap into my mission. So everything is going to go to a point. It comes to this point and then it always falls apart. And then this is when we get into the space of we're so used to saying that when it gets bad, I'm getting close to the good. What you're getting close to is that space of you're capping out in the space of fear. You're capping out in the space of fear. You're not building in that love. You're not building in the love-based state. You're not building in your higher self. So your disciplines never evolve past your anger. Now you can do everything that you're doing is only going to be based on pageantry. Let's give an example. You go to the gym. You go to the gym to work out your stress. You can't work out your stress at the gym. All you're doing is pumping that stress into your body. You're pumping the anger, insecurity into your body. Your anger now becomes an extension of your arm. Similar to if you feel like you got to go get the bit, similar to everything that you're always attaching shit to your trauma. All of your workouts is attached to your fucking trauma. All of your workouts are attached to your fucking trauma. When you go to the gym and the aspects that is divine with your purpose, and now you're understanding how you cultivate your energy, that means you have a process when you do it. There's a process to the aspects of how you do it. It changes, it shifts. Your energy shifts inside of that space. When I go to the gym now, me going to the gym, that's my gym alchemy. I've already woke up. I woke up. I did my stretch. I did my stretches, get myself my body stretched. I'm about to go work. After my meditation, I just spoke my affirmations. I've spoken my affirmations. Spoke my affirmations. I'm working with my affirmations. And now I'm doing my affirmations while I'm at the gym. I'm cultivating that energy. I'm being constructive with my energy. With every pump, I'm in gratitude. With every pump, I'm in honor. With every squat, I'm present with my emotion. I'm not, I'm angry. Because if I'm feeding my lower self, this energy only goes to that higher, my energy only goes to a certain point. My energy only goes to a certain point. And that energy naturally is going, when that energy reaches that heart space, and transmit, what am I going to attract? So you got to think about what you're attracting inside of, how you attract the shit into your space. If my energy is not transmuting, that means transitioning through my heart space. What am I going? I only can attract lower level shit. That means all I'm going to attract when I go into the gym and I'm looking at the weight rack and I see some dude over there bullshitting on the weight rack and I'm angry because my entire physique is built based off anger. I'm looking to release my anger. If I see shorties over there doing squats and I got that unresolved sexual issue, that unresolved sexual energy that I haven't been transmuting, I'm going to be looking at shorty ass and not do my workout. I don't know how to transmute it. See, that's the aspect of your purpose. When you're sitting inside of your purpose, you know how to transmute all energy inside of a space. You realize that, man, I ain't got to sit here and fuck all these bitches. I'm not supposed to be sitting out here thinking, in my mind, this is when it goes into the aspects of sexual attraction. If every time I look, it's not that you don't look at the chick, fellas. It's not that you don't look at the chick, but how are you cultivating and using that energy? Shorty can be sitting there, but how are you using that fucking energy? I'm going to give you a pro tip in the aspects of energy. Subconsciously, no matter what level a woman is on inside of her healing and where she's at, subconsciously, in the aspects of cultivating energy, the aspects to the highest point for a woman to create, in the lower levels is to create a child, and the highest levels is to cultivate an entire space to curate and facilitate. The quicker that you are to release, even if they don't understand this aspect, this is why they lose interest. Their ability to release, you're releasing your shit with ease, not being able to bring it to the highest point, not being able to cycle your fucking energy, your ability to release subconsciously triggers them. It subconsciously triggers them. And based on whatever internal narrative they are in, is how they're going to view that release. For you inside of your space. If you don't know how to, that means whenever you can see shorty walk in leggings in the fucking gym, them motherfuckers, she got on some nude fucking colored leggings and over there doing her squats, and you automatically get triggered, but like, oh man, I don't want to be caught on video, all that other shit. You should be able to look at that and use that energy. You should be able to cultivate that energy. You should be able to take that energy from that space and actually align with your purpose to be able to cultivate it to actually use that energy. But if my mind always goes into the aspects of releasing, i.e. the sexual aspect, the lower level of sexual aspect, that means I'm feeding an insecurity and a fear. When you're feeding that lower level energy, remember, shorties is being attracted to you when you think about that energetically. But if you got insecurities and fears, if your whole workout is based on insecurity, you getting your cars based on insecurity, you making money based on what you do and what you have is based on insecurity, lack, survival, guilt, shame, that's what they're attracted to. That's why you keep attracting that type of feminine energy inside of that space. That's based on that. And then every once in a while, as it's going through as it's shifting and it's changing, you're gonna get inside of that space. You're gonna get shorty that's going to challenge that. You're gonna get the dude that, then this is the game. You're gonna get a shorty that will challenge that. But since you're stuck in the lower aspects of yourself, you won't be able to deal with that energy. You feel that inside of your mind that your highest honor to give to, okay, cool, she likes me. She must prove that she likes me by submitting to me. She must admit that she will submit to me. Because you're still in your animal-like nature. That's the animalistic aspect. A lot of these traditional narratives that we have connected to are stuck within the survival complex or the traditional the survival narrative. You have to think about that aspect. The reason that your grandmother and your grandfather got together in that first part, when we think about the aspects of back in that day, we think about back in the good old days after slavery, was sharecropping. The more kids you had, the more business that it was always a business agenda. The traditional guidelines were always based on business. That business aspect was always attached to trauma. You're coming into a space to where this is I want you to think about it like this. Everything your parents said, your grandparents said, the old folks said to you back in the day, don't do this or this is going to happen. Don't do this. They were dead fucking serious about that. They manifested that as the reality that you came into. I'm doing a recap. That was what they manifested the reality of. You in opposition with that, their remember, the debt was unpaid, the information that they didn't have means automatically that shit became outdated. So you sitting inside of your space like, oh my God, Shorty was supposed to do this. Me and Shorty could have been. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that really mean? That doesn't really mean it. The aspect of us moving inside of that space, moving inside of our spaces that we're moving, you have to change that. We have to change and re-update that narrative. The traditional complexes that we used to use, the traditional complexes of he's going to provide and protect, was devoid of a man having a purpose. Remember, your grandfather didn't have a fucking purpose. Think about that shit. I had to really, when I really sat with that, as I started building out my platform, and I realized I was like, damn, my grandfather's only purpose was establishing his manhood that he lost after all those fucking years. So that's what he did in that timeline. So the rules in the logic that my grandfather had, my pops had, these people, my grandfather, my pops, these people had their dialogues, their rules, their settings that they had were based on that certain parameter. It wasn't based on building out a purpose. That's why when I look at, like, when I'm working with my clients, and like not just working with my clients, but as I continuously work with myself, the entire dialogue of my purpose has changed. The entire catalog of my legacy has changed. How I view legacy, how I view my purpose has changed. Therefore, the way that I go into those spaces must change and must be evaluated. Same thing for ladies. You're changing we're now changing the dialogues. It's nice that you're saying, okay, cool, I want a man that does this, this, and this, but you really got to be honest with yourself. How do you align in the aspects of learning yourself? This is what I mean by your projects. In you learning yourself, in you truly learning the aspects of you, the intimate aspects of your energy and how your energy actually works. You can't just keep saying that I am the divine feminine, so I naturally heal, so I naturally keep attracting broken men. That's not the reason that you're attracting broken men. There is a narrative that you have not yet addressed. Because if you truly are in the aspects, because healers, psychoanalysts, therapists, I do all the fucking time, I really had to understand that even inside of that space, when I first started doing the healing process and talking about healing and doing the work, shadow work, doing your healing, all going to that spiritual narrative, I remember earlier on, before I was like fully stated in my authentic purpose, I had no boundaries and standards. I had no boundaries and standards. So a lot of the people that I was attracting at first, they just kept triggering the shit out of me. They just kept triggering the shit out of me. Yo, I'm tired of these motherfuckers coming in my inbox, asking me these dumbass questions, these one-off questions. I'm tired of these women coming in my inbox, trying to boost up my ego on some other shit. You're so spiritual and da-da-da-da-da. And all. I'm tired of that shit. Until I sat with it. What am I really tired with? What am I really tired with? The process of application. Do I have boundaries in place? Do I have boundaries in place? What about my routines and my daily routines? What about my daily routines? My daily routine. Have I created I'm saying that I am in a space, I'm at peace, but have I created the points of peace in my day? When I start my day, is my day in the reflection of peace, the revelations of peace. When I end my day, is it in the inventorying of my peace? Is it in the inventory of my peace? Is it in the inventory of my gratitude? What is it in the inventory of? If I'm not, when I'm setting my day the night before and starting my day in between this point, that's when I'm going away. That's when I'm going back into my mind and I'm separated from the body and the body's being rejuvenation, everything being repaired. That's when I'm inside of that space. So when I wake up, how does my day start? Does my day start in dysfunction or does it start in chaos? What is dysfunction? Dysfunction is anything that leads dysfunction is anything that leaves me in a displaced state. That means separated from myself. As opposed to chaos being the potential energy for which me to apply order. So if I wake up and I gotta go pee, that's chaos. The potential for me to understand my order, to apply order. That means when I look down into the toilet after I'm taking my piss, what color is my pee? What information am I pulling about my color of my pee? Is my pee like you're being that scientist inside of that space. Everything has an intent and purpose. Instead of us reading, oh my God, I'm waiting for the sign and this happened. Define it for me. One of the things that I really had to understand, especially with me being in this space of actually when me doing aspects of that work, is I really had to define those things. I had to stop using outdated protocols. If I can't put a name to it, if I cannot put a name to it or connection to it, the spiritual becomes the mental is empowered by the emotional, the heart space transmits as within without is the result. The heart is the result. The heart don't hold shit. The heart isn't supposed to hold anything. This shit is supposed to move freely up and down these channels. Every time you get information, it goes to the strongest point. That means wherever the strongest pull is. That means if I get a whole fucking download transmission that shakes me to my root about grounding and being secure, before I give that information, I gotta sit with it first. See, the aspect of the application process is, I'm gonna repeat this aspect, the aspect of the pageantry process that we get stuck in. The pageantry process cannot be applied to because it is a glamour. It cannot be applied to. You only can take it for where it's at. There's no transparency to the pageantry. That means if I sat here and told you, hey, if you go outside and you stand in the grass, you stand in the grass and you call your energy back to you, your energy comes back to you. That's pageantry. Because I didn't walk you through shit. That is a disservice to me in my higher aspects of myself, in my purpose, in my honoring myself. But if I tell you the application process of going outside, standing in the grass and grounding, and telling you, yo, you need at least 20 minutes. You need at least 20 minutes of sunlight. Go stand in the sunlight. What are you feeling inside of that moment? I'm not going to generalize it to you. I'm not going to generalize it. The application process is breaking down that generalization. The pageantry process is stuck on the aspects of belief. Based on where you are at in the aspects of your healing process, in your emotional intelligence, your level of emotional intelligence is going to always, for the divine feminine, your level of emotional intelligence is always going to lead you to that of where your level of intelligence, emotional intelligence is at. For the masculine side, for the man, your emotional intelligence is always going to nurture that of what is the catalyst to where you're at, who you are. It always feeds to who you are. It always feeds to who you are, challenges what you have, challenges what you do. Because understanding in the truest aspect of that form, your value is at its highest based on what you do with nothing. Based on what you do with nothing. What can you do sitting down with only your thoughts being present? What can I do with only me sitting with my thoughts being present? When I sit there and I started thinking about certain processes and I'm going to do I realized that most of my life was based on somebody else serving as my purpose. And me in hopes in turn from that feminine presence of them serving me, I could be their project. Accept me as I am. I've been hurting. I can't trust shorties, because of this, and this. It was always this blame game, externalizing. Even when I did take accountability, my accountability was based on this is the key. My accountability was only based on the level of taking away choice. See that trauma response? You're a lot of the time when we sitting in the space based on that trauma response, a lot of the time when I'm sitting in that trauma narrative, it was taking away choices. It was taking away the choice. Because that's the identity. The pageantry takes away choice. I don't have the ability to choose because the choice has been taken away. I don't got the ability to choose. You don't have no choice. Most of them traumatic. The reason that you're so used to that dysfunction. Oh my God, then we bring trauma to the physical world. When we look at the physical aspects and how it plays out, because you're still playing in your mind, you're still playing that narrative in your mind. Hey, when it gets to the worst point, that means you're about to go into your new year, your new season. That's not a narrative that I stopped subscribing to. I stopped subscribing to shit had to get bad or worse because that was an excuse for me not to do the work. See, I had to sit with that. That was an excuse for me not to do the work. Because what's the use of me doing the work if it's going to be destroyed anyway? The truer thing that I had to sit with myself and update that process was when things start to get chaotic, when things start to fall away, when things start to be revealed to me in certain ways, it's only triggering me based on where I'm not present. So the things that fall away first are where that's stuff that I've already that's stuff that I've already usually done. I had to change the direction of the current of that flow. Okay, I'm in this space. I've done this, and this. That's why it fell away first. The stuff that is left, those are my lessons. These are my lessons inside of that space. These are my lessons. This is what I'm learning from this space. When I changed that directive, that's what led me closer to my purpose. There was a reason for me to attract certain women, certain brotherhoods. There was a reason I kept attracting to them and having conversations with them. Same conversations we having right now. I had to work at this with the aspects of those conversations. The thing that I was missing in those conversations was boundaries, was the standard, was the walkaway. Was I, using an example, was I in gratitude for having that conversation and this person receiving that information, me giving them the gift of that information? Was I honoring my feelings and emotions? That means that I understand my emotional energy, where my energy was at, where my mindset was at. When I was sitting inside of that space, was I doing that point in part? You feel what I'm saying? Sitting in those narratives and changing out those aspects. Sitting in the aspects of sitting with that thought process and sitting in that aspect, it helped me develop that's what helped me develop my standards. That's what helped me develop my standards. That's what helped me develop my structure. So now when coming back into my inbox, when now I'm working with different people, I'm not working from the angle. I only can talk to people that are ready to do the work. So when I create my space is based on people ready to do the work. I'm not talking, I'm not having a conversation with the people that aren't ready to do that. Aren't ready to do the work and they're not ready to do that work. I'm not going to talk to them. As much as it would hurt and be like, because I had that feel, I was like, oh my God, like, I wish I could just help everybody. I had to understand you have to be at a certain level. It's wishful thinking for me to think like, yo, this person right here, they in my life, we gonna be cool, and like I can help them, and all because I was thinking from an emotional wound. If this person comes along with me, I ain't got to do this alone. I don't know how many times every single time it was time for me, I was always put into a state of solitude. The most extreme states of solitude was back in like 2015, 16. I had nowhere to go. I was homeless. Before that moment, back in like 2008, Was 2008, 2009 was another moment when I was homeless. That homeless event brought me to the first time to facing a lot of my family shit. And then the second time came to this point of me setting the boundaries around a lot of my family shit. There was a reason for that shit to happen. It's resetting these narratives. See, as we're shifting out of this traditional mindset, there's nothing wrong. Like, for real, there's nothing in the aspect of saying that you want this person to do this, and this. But you have to look at how you align with that aspect and the aspects of what you cultivate. For the divine feminine, it's the aspects of cultivation and facilitation. That means you can't ask for protection if you cannot ask for protection from a space of insecurity. Because you're only attract to a level of insecurity to be able to use insecurity as your catalyst for protection. Going on the aspect with the fellas, you can't ask for nurturing. You can't ask for an aspect of nurturing, something to nurture you, if you're not sitting in a space when you're at a point of neglect. Because the moment that this neglect wound is filled, you take the little liquid Band-Aid, use an example of liquid Band-Aid, and the moment that Band-Aid is put over that wound of neglect, your purpose is meant to be broken down, used, broken down, and rebuilt. Now you think about the conversation that you have with a shorty. Now you think about the conversation that you have. The last thing that I want to do when I'm getting into that space with relationships, with talking to a woman, I don't want to share unresolved trauma. See, we got to get out of that narrative. What the fuck really therapy? We still have this for us as that we have that thought process of what therapy is versus what therapy isn't. We think therapy means to fix the. When I have people coming to me for the aspects of therapy with me, their first thought process is, okay, how do I fix it? Therapy, when you come to me, we're not fixing anything. We're not fixing anything. It's the state of acknowledgement, acceptance, addressing, auditing, learning new patterns, getting to the root of that shit, and really sitting with it. I can't give you a generalized answer and be like, you know what? Yeah, because all women do this I'm not going to give you this generalized answer. That ain't how it works. So you thinking, because this is the aspect, we get into the difference, there's a difference between the emotional dumping and actually emotionally venting. See, we have to change that narrative. Grand evening. We have to change that narrative. Because we're used to attaching our trauma to our accomplishments. The relationship is an accomplishment. Even if you don't mean to, this is me, you're not actively assessing yourself. You don't even mean to. But at a point in time, your trauma must be connected to that relationship. Because that's how your relationships have always worked. Your relationship with yourself is based on you wouldn't be the good woman that you are. You wouldn't be the good man that you are. You wouldn't be the good person that you are without your trauma. So your trauma is now connected to what you do and what you have, what you do have, and what you don't have. I wouldn't be a good person, and now I need to have this. I never did it this way. I never went this way. I never acted this way. Because you keep attaching your trauma to your accomplishments. You keep attaching your reject. That's why I think about this. If you've ever sat inside a space, this is for the ladies and some fellas, and for the fellas, this is both sides. I don't play the separation game. We play putting them shits together. If you ever got upset at when a dude tells you he does not care about the money you make or things of that nature, that's the truth. That's his truth. Why are you really upset about it? Why are you really upset? Why are you truly upset that he does not care or she do not care about your money and things? Why do you really get upset? Think about what you attach to all the money you made, my dude. Think about it. I remember sitting there and a chick say she don't care nothing about my money. And I don't know how many times I said that. I don't know how many times I said that. Like, yo, I want a chick that ain't all about my money. I don't know how many times I said that. But I spent so much time saying that, I never built out the space to what if. I never built out that space. Since I'm attaching it to my rejection and insecurity, here's the key. I was attaching, I don't want a chick to ask me about my money and things of that nature and worry about my money. Since I was attaching that to my rejection wound, the only thing that could attach to that frequency was rejection. So of course Shorty's not going to ask me about money. Because every time because she still remembers, she's still living through a traumatic space of every time that her mom asks a man for money, she got hit upside the fucking head. So she spent her entire life developing and creating a fucking glamour to where she don't have to ask no man for money. Where she didn't have to ask for money. So me sitting inside of that space, we can't grow. It's gonna come to a point of stalemate. She don't ask. She'll go through struggles. She'll go through all this shit, and then I'm sitting there like, yo, why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you let me know what was wrong? Why didn't you bring it to me? Because she's never learned to facilitate that. She's never learned to curate that type of question. She's never learned to facilitate that. On the other end, when you're sitting there and that guy he don't care. I got 3 degrees. He don't care. You got 3 degrees. Like, let's be honest in the example. You have 3 degrees. You got a degree in communications, neuroscience, and some other shit. You meet this guy. He's a fucking electrician. He's a plumber. Electrician. He's a tradesman. He got a trade. He got his own business. What do you think about this? He got his own business. Nothing that you did or all of your skill set is based on survival. So your skill set was based on what conversations you heard when you were little. Your daddy wouldn't shit. Your mom never depend on no nigga. Get you that same aspect. It don't align with him because he got his own business. He has a masteries in the aspects of his finances and budgeting. You never learned since you never had that masculine or that fraternal space in this aspect of this context. You never had the acknowledgement for your emotional development. When I break down to my clients the importance of your emotional intelligence. Your emotional intelligence, that's why I say the spiritual is the essence, the thought that's on your mind, your emotions, from your emotions are the byproducts of what you feed on. You eat based on emotion. Your nutritional intelligence, your mental intelligence, your physical, all your financial intelligence. You cannot tell me, you can't stir me and say that your emotions do not control your spending. Your emotional intelligence does not control your spending. You can't tell me otherwise. When I really sat with that process and really sat with like, yo, if my emotions control how I make money, if my emotions control my financial literacy level, then that explains why I used anger when I was stuck in a state with my anger at most of my jobs. I worked very, very well when I was angry. I curse people out, curse motherfuckers out, drop plates on the ground, do all types of wild ass shit. But I get the job done. But I was stuck inside of that cycle. My anger or fear could only go to a certain level, so my money could only go to a certain level. If my money went over that fucking level, I'm still moving at this emotional level. I'm literally, quite literally, spending more emotional energy than I'm bringing in. So now look at my budgets. I'm literally spending more emotional energy, my emotional energy being spent at a higher rate of capacity than I'm bringing in. My value system's fucked up. When you think about your grandfather and your grandmother and your grandparents and how they came up in that time where beans was 10 fucking cent. Beans was 10 cent. A pound of flour was a nickel type shit. When we think about that type of space. And the emotional aspect that was attached to that. Their emotional intelligence level was only to a certain level. They didn't have the availabilities that you have. That's why when we think about ancestor veneration, when you're really doing ancestor veneration, you're really working with your ancestors not from a space of pageantry, but from an actual level of application. You can be able to tell the difference if you're doing shit based on pageantry versus application. When I was doing shit based on pageantry, I was trying to cop every book. I was trying to watch every lecture. I was trying to get every statue. I was trying to get every fucking piece, do every fucking sigil. All that shit was pageantry as fuck. Because the only reason I kept getting more and more and more is because I thought it wasn't working. I didn't know how it worked. Because I didn't know how I worked. See, knowledge of self is exactly what that is. Knowledge of self. Not knowledge of what you had, what you didn't have, what you did, what you didn't do. That's one level. But that's the surface. The internal aspect is how it aligns. See, the application process of you working with deities, working with energies, calling my energy back to me. I didn't call my energy back to me until I went through a full heal. Every time I went through a healing process and healing cycle, I would then call my energy back to me. I would never call my energy back to me when I was in a highly emotional state. I would never call energy back to me when I was emotionally raw. That means I would not call my energy back to me when I was in an emotionally raw state when it came from this aspect of after a breakup or after a fight. I was not going to call my energy back to me. Because what energy am I calling back to me? What version of myself was I in when that energy was dispensed? What version, i.e. account of myself, what account was I in? Mm-hmm. What account was I in when I dispensed that energy? Because if I call that energy back me to that account, and that was an account that was in overdraw or depleted, it's going to be negative. So now, when I get excited that I got this, when I don't know my energy, I don't know how to cultivate my energy, I'm going through, I got my new energy. The energy that comes back can only be, the energy that comes back to me in a negative aspect that does no longer serve me a purpose, only can be used to dispense to go get more of the same shit. It only can be dispensed to get the same stuff. I can't get nothing different. This is where a lot of people get fucked up when they working with their energy. You called your energy back to you. Now you're trying to use your energy. Guess what? Your energy was just inside of that space. That's why it went there. See, this is what we got to get out of the old way of thinking based on fear. That energy went there, worked there because it was justified there. I can't take all of the energy. Give me break down an example. Until I was able to say with full that I can thank all 13 relationships that I've ever been in, all 13 girlfriends and relationships that I've ever been in, and I can thank them. I have no resentment towards them. I have no ill intent, no regrets towards anything. I appreciate the experience. in accepting what I was at the level where I was at in that space, and for them accepting me, thank you for the lessons and the blessings inside of that space. Until I could do that, I can't call back the energy from all the exes. I can't transmute the energy from all of my exes. I can't go through a process of transmuting the energy from my exes. Can't go through that process. I can't transmute it. It won't go. It won't clear out through the heart space. It won't go. I can't build something in the higher level. I only can build it in the lower level. This is where you get the fun. This is where you get the "Hey Big Head" text, because you unconsciously doing it anyway until you actually get the attention. This is where you get the "Hey Big Head" text all the time from. That hey big head, hey stranger, or you get the other shorty, or you get her friend, or you get other aspects keep coming through. This is where it comes through. You don't know your energy, so you can't see it. You still in the past. I did it based on pageantry. I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't about wrong or right. When you get to a certain level with yourself, it's not about wrong and right. It's about just and unjust. Based on your internal narrative that you have subscribed to, that unresolved point within inside of yourself, it was justified. Now, this is hard for a lot of people to accept in that aspect. He cheated on you, y'all got in fights, and all of that shit was justified. This is the aspect, this is when it gets hard when I'm working with my clients. That shit was justified. We can say in that human level, I can say no man should put his hands on a woman, no woman should put her hands on. We can say all of that, but we're not talking about from that level. We're talking about the justification being in the aspects of the equivalent exchange of said energy, where you learn to develop your skill set. If I developed my skill set in high conflict situations, what I wish my mother did, what I wish my aunts really did, what I wish that they would have did to the men in their lives, I am now creating said reality that with inside of my space, the moment that I pop off, to a chick and she stand her fucking ground and want to fight me, I've called that to me. Damn, can I say kudos to that shit? Bravo, you stood up for yourself. Bravo, you stood up for yourself. Can I say that inside of that space? 9 times out of 10, you can't say that inside of that space. You're still emotionally raw. You're going to go through the breakup. You're going to go through that breakup as I'm sitting here making that go away. You're going to go through that breakup. You're going to go through that breakup with shorty, and it won't be till afterwards that you can appreciate, okay, they did that. Those are the hard, that's the deeper levels of the aspects of that emotional trauma. The emotional trauma, the mental trauma, the physical trauma, these levels and points and projections and the aspects of trauma, the deeper aspects that you got to look at. You can't keep looking at it from a surface level. If you're still, like, give an example. This is another example inside of that space. Your mother could have had you when she was 15, 16 years old. The guy that she got with was 21, 22, 23. He was an army. He was a military guy. But you understand this? He was a military guy, and he swooned her. He was pulling up in front of the He was pulling up in front of the high school, sitting in that box Chevy. And the point I'm thinking about, sitting in that Toyota Celica, that new Eclipse, and picked up your mom's. Picked up your mom's. And that money, he picked up your mom's. Your mother, from that point, is still trying to rewrite the traumatic event that happened to her in aspects of her sexual trauma. She's still trying to rewrite it. You're basically reshaping that original point. We keep reshaping that original point until we learn to actually sit with it. Because from this point, you're trying to sit with the context inside of that space. Because something happened in that event that happened, something came from that event. The things that came from that event that were positive, you brought to the you okay, cool. Well, up until that point, I was getting your mom was probably getting your mom was being groomed inside of that space. So she was getting good things. But when she came to go tell her mother about her boyfriend or whoever it may have been, and your mom is still in her defensive wounds because she never had she never had her father in her life, and she's not trying to go through that same shit, and now trying to protect this man in that space of the trauma. You did what I'm saying? Now you hold that ill regard and you put that into the shadow. You not having that father in your life, you put that into your shadow. When that projects out into your space, onto this man, it projected onto that 28-year-old dude that paid her attention, and she overheard the conversations of what your mom wasn't doing. If my mom just did this, and this, my dad would have never left. That's the story you still playing, that's playing off in your shadow. That's how that got created. That energetic point was created. Your mom was 15, 16 years old when that dude came through in the box Chevy and picked up and took her around the corner. She ended up pregnant with you. She's still trying to rewrite that code in her mind. So now it comes to your aspect. She didn't deal with it. You didn't call her narcissistic, she's toxic, all these things. But in reality, she's really in reality, your mother, Miss Bernita, Brenda, had that. I'm using the Tupac lyric because that Brenda had that baby being you. Brenda had that baby being you, came through that energetic point. So it has to repeat itself until it's solved. You have to, when I talk to my clients, you have to separate the title you gave your mother as mother. You got to separate that from the aspect of who Brenda was. Who is Brenda? Your mom, the title mom, that's who she is, and that's based on what she does. Her skill set of what she does and what she has is going to be based on what Brenda said that she needed. We have to understand that through that traumatic programming, project, you are the project. You are the project. You are the result of an experiment that went wrong. I must right this wrong. This is when we get deep into it and you wondering what, like you look at aspects, I've dealt with people, I've dealt with women and men where like their mother do not like them because they not only just don't even remind them of the first dude that they were with, but that man that they were once with, they didn't want nothing to do with the family because he had his whole other family. So now you are the result of that resentment. So every time your mother looks at you unconsciously, she pours that resentment onto you. And now you're her project to become what she's always wanted. I'm a prove that if I make you what I need you to be, I can prove that I deserve a man of that caliber. Fast forward and come into the future. Unresolved became more unresolved, became more unresolved. The pageantry kept going forward over and over and over again. Nobody was learning or changing anything. So you picked up the traditional you picked up the traditional tones. Why were you so connected to it? Because of your, I want a family. When I had to really when I was sitting with my earlier shadows in my earlier years of my work, and before I could even sit in the aspects of what I do, I really had to sit and really see it as what it really was. That's the only way that I could actually create my standard, the processes, the sciences, the things that I use, the way that I move these things. That's the only way that I could do it. Without that aspect, all I was doing over and over and over again for the most of the time was living out. Oh shit, go back. Okay, I got that. All I was doing most of the time all I was doing most of the time all I was doing most of the time as I'm writing something into the comments was repeat the same aspects until I came in and understood what my purpose was. Once I understood what my purpose was, everything changed. I can now change everything. We're going to put this here. We're going to pin this comment. All right, cool. That comment's up there. I kept going through that same emotional process. Exactly. I had to break my heart. When we think about your heart becoming as light as a feather, that is an ongoing process of transmutation. One thing that is the biggest breakdown. Whenever you are triggered, that is letting you know when you're not emotionally present. Depending on the weight of that present, where you're not emotionally present, that's where you go through that process, the application process. That's when you must bring that acknowledgement. Once you have really created that space and you now transmute that to the higher space and start to build, that is you making your heart as light as that feather. That means I can say I have no regrets. I have no resentments. And not one voice in my head says, nigga, you lying. Because I'm listening to that aspect. Nigga, you lying. Even if a voice does say that, I can wait. Yeah, I have no regrets about nothing in my past. Not even with Shorty that happened in that. And what you call it? What about Shorty? What about Shorty when you was in high school and Shorty was gonna give you something and you said no? Okay, and yeah, like nigga, I wasn't missing class. I wasn't missing class. How would I explain that shit to? How would I explain that shit to my parents? Damn, you right. And if you did that, this would have happened. This probably would have. I said, yep, that probably. I can have that conversation with myself, and I can create that space. In that transmutation and creating those first initial spaces in the aspects of your purpose, you got to build that space out first. One of the things that we'll stop doing through that not going through the full transmutation process is we don't sit there and think about that. We won't sit there and think about that aspect. Okay, cool, but I did this, this, and this, and I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this, this, and... Nigga, what? I'm building peace. My peace is based on who I am, not what I do. Because as I've been saying earlier, if I base my standard, if I base my abundance, if I base any of my health, my wealth, if I base any of these aspects of myself, my protection, if I base any of these aspects on what I have and what I do, and not based on who I am as the resource through my purpose, the moment that goes away is the moment that as soon as I get it, I'll stop. When I lose it, I'll start. Trauma response. When you get it, you stop. When you about to lose it, you start or you restart. Think about relationships. You in a relationship, were you really listening to the aspects of the relationship? Were you really listening to the relationship? Or were you only listening, well, if this checks off, I can ignore everything else. So now, naturally, since you're going into that relationship, your automatic space, you're saying, oh my God, he emotionally manipulated me. You went into that space and went against that man's will. No matter where that person's level was at. Remember, a dude cannot be your project. That means if a man is at a certain level, ask him, is he comfortable at that level? You have to learn that individual. It's hard to learn an individual when you haven't learned yourself. Fellas, a woman cannot be your purpose. Fellas, a woman cannot be your purpose. Because your purpose naturally is supposed to be broken down, destroyed. Fuck, your purpose is supposed to go through the fire. So Shorty can't be your purpose of healing. He can't be your project to your healing. He can't be your purpose through your healing process. One of the most detrimental things that you can do, and what you keep collecting debt on, is because you trying to change him and make him better. I'm gonna make him better. You can't.